Polkadot. So yeah, hopefully, because as a DEX, liquidity is basically the lifeblood of any of a DEX, of an exchange, and DEXs are a core foundation of any ecosystem, right? So liquidity is basically the main thing. And about liquidity, basically the agenda is, how do we make it easy for liquidity to flow through so that it could permeate into the rest of the ecosystem. So just a little bit about Stella. We're basically the first and only DEX to have surpassed $1 billion in trading revenue since inception. We're basically a hybrid DEX, right? So under the hood, it's a hybrid V2 standard AMM as well as concentrated liquidity AMM. And right now, the majority of our assets are in concentrated liquidity, which is basically the most efficient form of AMMs on DeFi, right? Because concentrated liquidity is very efficient, and it actually mimics the centralized exchange order book. There's a bell curve, right? So the majority of liquidity is within the within market ranges, market prices. So hence, it's very efficient as compared to V2 standard AMM, where liquidity is distributed across from 0 to infinity, right? So you can understand the power of V3, where $1 of liquidity would yield much greater in terms of reducing slippage for users. So yeah, what has been very interesting recently is in the last week, we've opened up liquidity incentives. Backstory, StellaSwap is one of 2 protocols that received $1 million in grants to sort of like incentivize liquidity providers and stakers. So we're proud to be one of the 2 protocols, trusted protocols within the Polkadot ecosystem to spearhead liquidity growth, right? So it's been live for the first week of blue chip assets. So we have across 4 weeks, every week, there's going to be a different asset class that's going to be incentivized. We staggered it that way to sort of like increase focus. And yeah, if this is a very big thing within the Polkadot ecosystem, because we know that liquidity incentives are one of the primary, or if not the main sort of like mechanism, right, to attract users and TVL. So hence, this is a very important thing. And if if you look across other ecosystems, this is where they grow the TVL volume liquidity. And as part of the liquidity incentives, which will go live across the year, I think what we've been working on for the past 6 months, we got our proposal for the incentive passed in April, right, or April, somewhere around there. And for the past 6 months, we've been working to sort of like spearhead all the partnerships across this, right? So not only would incentives go live on our direct pools, but there's also going to be announcements of key partnerships, which is going to really, really boost the campaign, right? Because we understand that $1 of liquidity on, say, StellaSwap, right, is different in attracting users as compared to other distribution points, right? Other protocols, that may have much higher user bases, right? And therefore, we've actually secured a partnership with one of the top 3 centralized exchanges that has a DeFi wallet and DeFi arm to sort of like, they would also integrate our pools and support our campaigns. And that is going to go live within in 2 weeks. So that's going to be a main thing, which hopefully is going to bring Polkadot across the sort of like millions of user bases. And that is something that we've been working on for the past year. Right, so yeah, liquidity incentives is live on Polkadot. So hopefully, you can make some noise, or you can even stake directly to earn ecosystem rewards. So, there's 2 main things that would that would sort of like, that we can evaluate to see the success of any or liquidity accrual within the ecosystem, right? I've talked about liquidity incentives, which is apparent, right? But the next important part is basically liquidity abstraction, which is basically the gist of what I'm talking about today. So that entails sort of like the infrastructure with regards to liquidity and how it can flow through. Obviously, TLDR, the easier it is for liquidity to flow in, the much, the better it is for users to stake. You can see increase in user count TVL, right? And therefore, the infrastructure behind that is very important. And that is what I'm going to talk about in terms of the Polkadot infra with regards to liquidity that we've built and is sort of like synthesizing, right? So what we've planned to be, our vision from day one was to be a Schelling point, right? It's very interesting to see because the Schelling point encompasses two key pillars, right? Which is basically external liquidity into Polkadot. And then the second foundation is basically internal liquidity across parachains within Polkadot, which is XEM, right? So if you look at the cross-chain swaps, that has been something that we've worked on with Squid and Exela for the past 2 years. I'm gonna go deep later. That makes it much easier for liquidity to go into Polkadot via Moonbeam. So basically, for context, we're built on Moonbeam. Moonbeam is the EVM layer on Polkadot, so that makes life much easier. That makes liquidity accrual much easier via cross-chain swaps, which are all EVM. So just connect your MetaMask wallet, sub wallet, or any other EVM wallet, and you're good, right? And then on the XCM side, we're basically using Moonbeam's SDK to facilitate transfers between parachains into StellaSwap. So this is what I talked about in terms of cross-chain swaps, where you can see the goal, before cross-chain swaps is, okay, I want to bridge an asset from one ecosystem, say Ethereum, to another, say Moonbeam, right? The traditional aspects of bridging is very clunky, right? Because you need to use a bridge interface, and then you can only bridge that asset, a USDT from Ethereum to Moonbeam, and that's it. It's basically value transfer singularly, right? But with cross-chains, it suddenly sort of redefines the way you can transfer value, because within one click and within seconds, yeah, literally, because Squid just pushed a new update that makes cross-chain swaps much faster. Within seconds, you can actually transfer or swap any assets from any ecosystem into any asset that we support. Basically, obviously, we recommend native assets like Glimmer, DOT, USDC, USDT, native assets in a click of a button, right? So within one click, within 10 seconds or less, depending on which ecosystem, and with extremely low slippage, you could get your assets transferred very quickly. So hence, this has been a sort of like a very successful product launch for us, because right now, the behaviors of users, as in the majority of them are using this, right, instead of traditional bridging, because it's much faster. This is basically abstraction, the manifestation of abstraction in your face, where everything is one click, just a single wallet, just a very clean UI. So this has been something that, we've worked with Squid since the start of 2 years ago. But we've launched it last year, so this is pretty cool. So you guys should check it out. And as part of, if you're interested to sort of like get rewards, you can use this to transfer value across, right? And this is basically the other foundation, which is XEM, where you can transfer any assets from any parachains within Polkadot seamlessly. So what we use Moonbeam SDK on the back end. So it's very cool, and you can basically transfer any native asset securely using Polkadot security via XE, right? So beyond that, right, is basically as a DEX, what we want to ensure is, as part of the liquidity user flow, is to make sure that users get the best prices possible, because that's what users want, right? When you want to buy an asset, you want to get the lowest price for it. You want to pay the lowest fees associated with the trade, and therefore a hybrid AMM structure was the most optimal sort of way that we designed the DEX. It could, I mean, simply put, it's manifested at the front end where, if you want to get swap a token, you can see that it passes through a route, right? And all these routes could be different AMMs, different pools, right? So that makes life much easier because at the end of the day, all you have to see is how much I'm getting of the output token and how much do I pay. So a hybrid AMM structure really makes life much more simple, because low slippage trading um, would can occur much more effectively, right? And especially so if all those pools are on V3, right? And obviously extensive choice. And with V3 comes high utilization. What does this mean? So for example, $1 million in liquidity of our pools could yield 1 million of daily volume within 24 hours, which before V3 concentrated liquidity era, that was unheard of because on average it would be 5 to 10% utilization, but you can easily get 100% utilization. Why? Because again, the bell curve of concentrated liquidity where liquidity is much more efficient because it's concentrated within the price ranges, right? And therefore users will get very low slippage and the manifestation of that is high utilization. And one thing that we've launched at the mid of this year is something that we've worked on for the past year. Basically a manifestation of like Merkle rewards where we had to sort of like distribute tokens in an off-chain way because of a major pain point in DeFi where connecting to active liquidity managers like Beefy, Gamma, Arrakis, it's a pain in the ass because for each ALM that we want to integrate, we need to maintain a rewarder account, which doesn't make sense because before V3, V2 standard AMM, integrating with ALMs was much easier because they will just route to our rewarder contract, right? So for V3, high complexity entails higher configuration, and that's why we launch off-chain. Now, what off-chain does in terms of manifestation, right? For the user end, is making liquidity easier, right? So instead of the usual creating LP, stake, and then earn rewards, you don't have basically the farming, right? You actually don't have to do the extra step of farming. Once you create the LP, automatic earning reward. So that's one of the key propositions of our off-chain rewarder where you can earn immediately without farming and immediately after you've created or pulled your liquidity together, right? And yeah, this is, with off-chain rewarder, we can connect with ALMs like Beefy much more easier with our rewarder system. And all they have to do is just populate our APRs and our liquidity on their front end. So if we look at our pools, especially our top 7 pools, you can see that it is supported by Beefy. So you can literally, and why do you need ALMs, right? Because you can automate your liquidity provisioning, right? So for example, if you choose an expert range, right? High liquidity, yes, but there's a high possibility that you will be out of range. Prices move and your range is out. Therefore, you won't earn. But with Beefy, it's relatively concentrated, but it's automated. So you keep on earning, right? So that's where the value proposition of ALMs that we work with makes life easier for liquidity staking. And it's part of the liquidity abstraction process for users, right? So at the end of the day, they don't have to actively manage their positions, but they can just sleep and just automate their positions through Beefy. And obviously, Beefy has been our partner since day one. They have like hundreds and thousands of users. They're basically the most popular yield optimizer and gaining to be one of the top ALMs. And that's why we sort of like exclusively use Beefy for now. Obviously, we would, with our off-chain, we can support any ALMs, but we have a strong connection with Beefy and the user experience. And therefore, right now, it's Beefy. And it's relatively new, right? So automated vaults is something which is a key part in making a liquidity much easier because with V3 it could be complex for a user to understand what is liquidity concentration, right? Why can't I just provide liquidity across all ranges like V2, which is much easier, but your liquidity isn't used that much and therefore you will not earn higher, right? So it is the typical risk-reward ratio that you get in finance, high risk, high rewards, low risk, low rewards. But at the end of the day, with automated staking, what we want to ensure is the optimal rate of you're going to earn a lot, but also you, in a safe way, an ALM automated liquidity manager would manage the position for you, so that you know your liquidity is always balanced, it's always in range, and you're always earning. So those are the key things. And as part of the ALM with Beefy, so what they've also done is basically a zap feature where you can use a single token to zap into a liquidity pool. So what this means is that if you're staking into a dot USDT pool, right? So either you have dot or either you have USDT, you can stake either one of those coins, single zap. So basically that's like single asset staking, right? That's another point of liquidity abstraction, right? Because traditionally you need to balance out your two coins to see, okay, what's the optimal ratio I need to swap, blah, blah, blah. But with Zap, it's just one click and it is automated in terms of just redistributing your initial asset into the other asset to and creating that and providing that liquidity into the pool. So this, as you can imagine, single zap is obviously very popular, and that's one of the key value propositions of an ALM like Beefy, where we sort of like understand how things like this would make it much more easier, and especially in sort of like Polkadot, right? Because Polkadot uses substrate, and we're focused on the EVM side of things because that's where, I mean, we built on Moonbeam, right? And that's where the majority of liquidity and users are. And hence, things like this would really make life easier for the users when they want to contribute liquidity and they want to stake. They basically want to do any DeFi on StellaSwap. Things like this would make it much easier. So yeah, I think that's basically the rundown on us. And yeah, do follow our Twitter for the latest announcements. In this week, we're gonna launch the second week of Dot Incentives, which is focused on stable coins. So if y'all like relatively risk-free assets which are not volatile, so this is something that you'd love, where you can put your native USDT or USDC into our pools to earn the dot rewards. So yeah, do follow us, and for announcements, there's gonna be a heavy list of announcements coming up in the next few weeks, as we've worked on for the past year, which is gonna be very exciting to spotlight Polkadot and make sure we're heard, and that our incentive campaign is across the entire DeFi and crypto ecosystem. So with that, I thank you for your time, and yeah, good luck.